Good morning, everyone. So this is the last session of our RaCEEs course, session 6, and today I'm going to run this session on my own, and we're going to cover different elements. First of all, the introduction section of the commentary. Then I will give you a brief outline of what to expect at the workshop on 2nd of September. And we also have a moment for Q&A towards the end of the session if you have any burning questions about the course or the homework. As usual, I have to remind you that the session is being recorded and it will be made available on the ARC No West Coast YouTube channel. If you have any questions about the recording, please let us know. Okay, so next slide is again a recap of the type of content we are trying to cover with this RaCEEs course. So now we are on session 6. We're going to cover introduction, workshop presentation, and then we have a Q&A moment, as I was saying a few seconds ago. And in terms of the structure of the commentary, which we will co-produce after the workshop, we are now moving into the introduction section. So in a way, we are covering the first section in our last session, but our aim was to give you some knowledge around the method and the result first, and then to move to a bit of an easier section towards the end of the course. So we are trying to cover these easier elements, let's say, now with the introduction. In the introduction section of the commentary, we will have to explain in a concise way why the economic evaluation is important and how it adds additional knowledge. So we can find this type of information from the paper directly, but we also need to explore other sources, and I will give you some examples in a minute. So the aim of today's session is to talk about the introduction, to talk about what to expect at the workshop, and to get some clarifications or answers on any aspects related to the RaCEEs course. We will focus in the first bit around on the elements of the introduction, so prevalence, impact for individuals and caregivers, economic impact, justification and aim of economic evaluation. I will give you some details about each of these elements in a minute. And then, as I was saying, a bit of a coverage around what to expect at the workshop and a Q&A session. Okay, so the introduction section, we have a recommended structure we will need to follow when we are going to co-produce the commentary. The introduction section is usually not that big, to be honest, but we got different elements we need to cover. The first one is the prevalence. So, of course, your own economic evaluation paper will have a specific disease or health area, and we are going to give some information about the prevalence of that particular condition or disease. That means the number of people affected by the condition. In the same way, we are going to give some information again regarding the impact on the individuals and caregivers. Of course, a condition can be quite debilitating, can have some physical, mental health impact on people. So we're going to try and detail those repercussions and those consequences which affect the life of the individuals and also the caregivers. With this being an economic commentary, we also need to make a point around the economic impact of the particular disease or condition or the particular problem or in general. So we need to try to find some information around the burden, the costs on the individuals, on the healthcare system, on the wider economy. Of course, things might change in different countries, jurisdiction. Now in the UK, of course, we know that typically the burden of the treatment of the disease is incurred by the NHS. There might be some impact on individuals and caregivers, of course, with out-of-pocket expenses, but these types of expenses might be more relevant in other countries. Let's think about the US, for example, or countries like lower or middle-income countries. And lastly, we also need to try to formulate a concise summary of the justification behind the economic evaluations, why the authors thought that the economic evaluation was important and the aim of the economic evaluation. In terms of the sources, as I was mentioning before, we can find some information regarding all these elements from the paper, but we also need to explore other sources. So in terms of the prevalence, the impact on individuals and caregivers, economic impact. we can find information from the paper, as I was saying, but there are other sources which we need to use as well, and we need to explore. And I'm going to give you some examples in a minute. The justification and the aim of the economic evaluation will come from the paper itself. So typically that is contained in the last paragraph of the introduction section of the actual paper. The last few sentences it will detail the justification and the aim of the economic evaluation. Any questions so far? How do we identify the info regarding the different elements? The first thing I want to say is that there is a rule. So anything we write about the prevalence, the impact on individuals, the economic impact, it needs to be supported by one or more references. So of course, there are some sentences which will sound very trivial, like I don't know, people with Parkinson's disease will be affected by physical and mental health repercussions. But even if it's trivial, we need to find some reference supporting what we're writing, and this is typical of any scientific article. This is valid apart for everything apart from the aim, because the aim will come from the economic evaluation paper itself. So that's something we can naturally support by just indicating that is the aim of the authors of the economic evaluation. But for everything else, we need to have one or more references substantiating any statement we make. In terms of where we can find some information around prevalence, economic impact on the individuals and caregivers, I'm going to give you some examples here. So, of course, relevant literature will be the first port or first type of source we might want to explore. And we can use PubMed to do that. And I'm going to give you an example later on how we can use PubMed to identify relevant articles. Sources of information regarding the prevalence, impact on the caregivers or individuals, so economic impact will come also from grey literature or reports from national and international bodies like WHO, ONS, and NICE, for example, but also from charities dedicated to specific condition. We often find a lot of information regarding prevalence, for example, or the burden on NHS from charities like the Stroke Association, like cancer research, or, for example, charity dedicated to dementia or people with learning disabilities. So there are a lot of information available there. And information you will find from the websites of these charities will often have references themselves. So there are footnotes with references which you can then use to support your own statements. Let's have a look at an example now. We can find the info on PubMed. So one thing I will say, if you go on PubMed, just type the title of your economic evaluation and search that title, and you will find the article straight away. It should be the first record you find. And then you click on the record and you will see the article there in front of you. This is just an example of an article we use for a past RaCEEs. Then if you scroll down, so if you scroll the page down halfway through, you will see some similar articles suggested by PubMed, and these are very good examples, typically of places where you can find information about prevalence, impact on individuals, caregivers, and economic impact. So you can have a look at these articles, maybe not in depth. You can have a look at the title, of course, the abstract, and see whether they might contain some information which is going to be relevant for our introduction section. And then what we are going to ask you to do as part of the homework is to extract the info that you think is useful from the paper and copy and paste that info into the homework document, which I'm going to show you later. Perhaps more importantly, try to remember to copy and paste the reference. So if you see an article which provides some evidence regarding the prevalence, for example, copy and paste the extract, but also copy and paste that reference itself. So, and you can do that on PubMed by clicking on Cite on the right-hand side, and then you will have a pop-up window with a full reference, and you can just simply press copy, and then you can paste that reference onto your homework document. Any questions? Okay. And I'm going to give you some examples from our first RaCEE, which I'm sure you will be familiar with now. It was about advanced Parkinson's disease. And this is the way we summarize the evidence around the prevalence, for example. So right at the beginning of the article, we wrote, I don't know, 3, 4 sentences regarding the prevalence. And you can see that we used different references, but each statement, each sentence was supported by at least one reference. The same for the economic impact. We had a subsection dedicated to the impact on the healthcare system. Again, in this section, we utilize, I think, just one reference, this article by Findlay et al. But this article gave us some good indication around the cost, the main driver behind the cost for treating people with advanced Parkinson's disease. And finally, the justification and the aim for the economic evaluation that came directly from the paper, and we only needed to reference the paper there. But this is just to give an indication of how we write up the different elements of the introduction section. And this is something you will do after the workshop with your team lead. It might be the case the team lead will write up all the section and you review it, and then or maybe alternatively you might just co-write the different section together with the team lead. In terms of the homework for this session, we are going to basically ask you to find and extract info on each of the introduction components or elements, and including the references uses. You got more time now to complete this task because we don't have any other session now. This is our last one. So you have the whole of August to complete this task. And again, you got a table to fill in. And you got different introduction items on the first column, so prevalence, impact on individuals, caregivers, and then economic impact, justification and aim of the economic evaluation. You got a definition of what each introduction item means, possible sources with the links provided, and then the last 2 columns is where you actually do your homework, so you will have to copy and paste the info regarding the prevalence here, for example, and then copy and paste the reference you used. Where you found that particular information. As usually, you can access this homework document by clicking on session 6, in this case on Teams, and you'll find a document with your own name, and that's your homework document. Any questions? Okay. Now, I'm going to cover now very quickly what we're going to do at the workshop, just to give an indication what to expect from the workshop, but we will repeat this information at the beginning of the workshop again. So the workshop, as you know, is on Tuesday, the 2nd of September. We're going to send you another reminder during August, and I think you already received some emails about any dietary requirements, but we will send you more information again about the logistics, where to find parking. You'll have a visitor card, so you can access the building with ease. And as I say, at the start of the workshop, we will give you some indication again about the structure of the day, but I'm going to give you here again some indication of what to expect at the workshop. So we started the workshop in the morning, of course, and in the morning we are going to go through the critical appraisal of the economic evaluation. So far, we basically use the economic evaluation as a vehicle to learn more about health economic evaluations of health or social care interventions. Now we're going to look at the economic evaluation with a critical eye a bit. So during the morning of the workshop, we will consider a checklist, a quality appraisal checklist, with loads of questions, to be honest, but it's going to be very thorough. And together with your team lead, you will go through each question into this checklist to check the quality of the economic evaluation. For example, just to read the first few. Is there a clear statement of the decision problem? Was the effectiveness of the intervention established on a systematic review? Was a comprehensive description of competing alternatives given? So these are all standard questions that people use to judge the quality of an economic evaluation. So all these questions come from standardized tools. And together with the team lead, you will be able to explore the quality of the economic evaluation. Why we do that? Because that critical appraisal will be one of the integral part of the commentary. So we will write the commentary around the critical appraisal. Of course, we will have a concise summary of the introduction, the method, and the results, but the real original part will come from the critical appraisal. So it's important we go through these questions together at the workshop, and we discuss this question and the answers to these questions together at the workshop. In the afternoon and after the workshop, we will also have time to discuss implications for policy and practice which come from the findings of the economic evaluation. So this means discussing what the findings mean to you as an health social care professional, as an expert in the field, or as a service user. We have different prompts, and this is not an exhaustive list of prompts we can use, but just to give you some indication of what we can discuss is, for example, should a specific intervention be implemented as a result of the economic evaluation? Do we need to think about potential adaptations of the intervention? Will the intervention be accepted by the individuals and as social care professionals? Could the intervention be scaled up effectively? What will be the main barriers and facilitators to its delivery? But again, more questions, more prompts can be conceived here. This is again a very useful part of the workshop, because we, the team lead, health economists, say will learn a lot from your thoughts around these different prompts. As I say, you might be an health social care professional, an expert in the field, service user, but we will really value your thoughts around all these different questions and the elements in order again to write up the commentary for your specific team. And then the third main activity of the workshop is to talk again in the afternoon about future research, what needs to be done, what gaps were not breached by that specific article, by the specific economic evaluation. So how we need to evolve the knowledge around that specific health or condition area. This is something we will go towards the end of the workshop. Perhaps we will need to discuss some elements after the workshop. But one thing I would strongly suggest is that we don't read the suggestions made by the authors themselves, because the authors will have probably a paragraph or some sentences around future research, but it's better we come up with our own suggestions first, and then maybe we can have a look afterwards what the author suggested and see if our suggestions align with their suggestions. And finally, this is a suggestion that came from a previous course, so we will try to dedicate and carve out some times towards the end of the workshop, maybe in the last 20 minutes or so, to do a mini showcase of the findings from each team. So we're going to ask you or you or the team leads, to present the findings from the workshop, from the activities done at the workshop. Okay, any questions so far? I think this is a moment for questions on the course and the homework, but I haven't received any questions by email, but if you have any questions during August or just before the workshop, just feel free to email us or email myself, and we are more than happy to help you with any questions or doubts. So I'm now reaching the conclusion of the course, but I just want to show you this slide, which is a very complex slide. So apologies in advance, but it's just a slide which describes, I think, the trajectory we have taken with this course and the different elements we have covered from session 1 until now, and then we will cover again in the future with the workshop. On the left-hand side of this slide, you will see all the different elements of the introduction, the method, the results, and the commentary that we covered or we will cover in the workshop. On the right-hand side, you will also see an indication of the recommended number of sentences we need to use to write up the different elements of the commentary. These are recommended. Of course, the team leads will coordinate the writing up of the commentary after the workshop, but it might be the case that we are submitting the commentary to a very restricted journal with, like, I don't know, 1,000 words limit. So of course we will need to make some cuts to adhere to that word limit. Usually we tend to write up the first draft with 2,500 words, and then we might need, of course, to reduce the word count later on when we try to submit our article. But again, this is something we will assess later on when we make the decision around the journals we would like to submit our commentary to. Okay, so just to conclude, today was the last session of the course. We are going to see you on Tuesday, 2nd September, for the face-to-face workshop at the University of Central Lancashire in the engineering building. We're going to be in rooms 401 and 402, and you got all the details in the calendar invite. If you need a reminder, just let us know, but I will send you a reminder during August. And just the last thing to note, we opened the registration for the next RaCEEs course, which will be presumably in spring next year, so around the same time as this one in 2026. You got a link to the registration form for any colleagues, friends that you know that they might be interested in doing this course. So I'll leave you the link there if you want to spread the word. And thank you very much for attending this course, and we will see you at the workshop in September. Thank you.
Thank you.